Hello YouTubers! I will be going through this week's games, review last week's tips and leaderboard of our footy tip comp, and also go through my Brownlow Votes for season 2025. My Brownlow predictor after round 20 are: in top spot, I've got N. Dacos, Collingwood with 35 votes. In second spot, I've got B. Smith, Geelong with 28 votes. He trails N. Dacos by 7 votes. In equal third spot, with 2 players tied with 26 votes, are N. Anderson, Gold Coast, and C. Cyril, Fremantle. And in fifth spot, with 22 votes, I have Tom Green from GWS Giants. These are my top 5 of the 2025 Brownlow Vote predictor after round 20. My tips for last week's round: I had 2 incorrect, therefore I had 7 out of 9 correct. I got Brisbane Lions incorrect against Gold Coast Suns. The Lions lost by 60 odd points. And the last game on a Sunday, I got Melbourne incorrect against St Kilda. The D's were up by 46 points at 3/4 time. However, Naz had kicked 2 goals in the last 30 seconds, and St Kilda stole the game from the D's. Therefore, my total for round 20 was 7 out of 9. Let's look at the leaderboard of the Talking Effing AFL footy tips. In top spot is Patrick L32 with 118 tips. Wow, he had a perfect 9 out of 9 to jump up into top spot. And 2 players in equal second spot with 117 tips are Talking Effing AFL, that's me, and Potter 1. And in fourth spot with 116 votes, we have I Am Hacks. These are the top 4 of the Talking Effing AFL footy tips after round 20. Before we continue, I would like to ask for a very small favour. If you enjoy this AFL content, please take a sec to subscribe to the channel and like the video. That would be awesome. Okay, let's return back to the show. First game of the week is between Western Bulldogs and GWS Giants, played on a Thursday night at Marvel Stadium. The players in the mix for the Doggies are Davidson, Carlos and Selwood, that's with 2 L's. For the Giants, their players in the mix are Ralston, Thomas and Kuzetski. Last week, the Doggies smashed the Bombers by 93 points, whereas the Giants had a good 34-point win against Sydney Swans. At one stage, they were down by 35 points in the second quarter. Where the game will be won at, it's the Giants' full-on and Bulldogs' defense. The 3 totals of the Giants of Stringer, Hogan and Cadron against Bosinga, O'Donnell and Lobb. I expect the Giants forward to dominate in these positions, where I can see like Hogan kicking 4 or 5 goals, Cadron kicking a few, and the package Stringer to kick a couple of goals against its old side, the Doggies. And I look at the potent Giants full line, and you also got small forwards like Darcy Jones. I'm going to tip the Giants to beat the Doggies by 26 points. The second game of the week, played on a Friday night at Adelaide Oval, is between the Adelaide Crows and Hawthorn Hawks. Last week, the Crows destroyed Port Adelaide by 98 points, and the Hawks had a good 24-point win against Carlton. The players in the mix for the Crows are Cumming, Burgess, Smith and Nankervis. For the Hawks, their players in the mix are Ramsden, McKenzie and Sarong. Where the game will be won at, it's the Crows 3 totals plus the 2 medium small forwards of Fogarty, Philfoot, Walker, Rankin and Keys against the Hawthorn defenders of Battle, Barras, Sicily, Impey and Hardwick. Just look at the Crows full line. They've got so much firing power. Either one of Philfoot, Fogarty or Walker will kick 4 or 5 goals, and you got Rankin and Keys somehow always appears to kick 2 or 3 goals. And with Adelaide's scoring power and their good defenders of like your Worrells, Murray and Co, I just expect the Crows defenders to stop the Hawthorn's forward and the Crows forward line to kick a big score. I say Adelaide in a close game by 8 points. Third game of the week, played Saturday lunchtime, is between Melbourne Demons and West Coast Eagles. Last week, Melbourne Demons had a shattering 6-point loss to St Kilda Saints. They were up by 36 points at 3/4 time, and in the last 20 seconds, the side-winging Moreira kicked 2 goals to steal the game from the D's, whereas the Eagles lost to Fremantle Dockers by 49 points. The players in the mix for the D's are Jefferson, Adams and Cully. For the Eagles, Long, Petricelli and Harry Edwards are in the mix. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield set of the two respective sides. For the D's, you got Gordon ruck with the midfielders and wingers of Rivers, Langland, Petrarca, Chandler and Langford, and that's having Oliver on the bench. Whereas for the Eagles, you got Flynn and ruck with the midfielders of Hoff, Hardy Reid, Kelly, Hutchinson and Clay Hall. Just looking at the two teams' ruck midfield set respectively, I see more class in the Melbourne's ruck and midfield. Thorn, Petrarca, Langland's a good player on the wing, and I expect the D's to win the stoppages and clearances and provide more inside 50s compared to the Eagles. And I'm going to say Melbourne to beat the Eagles by 35 points. Fourth game of the week, played on a Saturday afternoon, is between Gold Coast Suns and Richmond Tigers. Last week, Gold Coast belted the Brisbane Lions by 66 points at home, whereas Richmond lost to Collingwood by 36 points. The players in the mix for the Suns are Walter, Moyle and Swallow. For the Tigers, their players in the mix are Armstrong, Kozinski and Taranto. Where the game will be won at, it's just where the two lists are. The Tigers are young, developing, rebuilding side, lots of first and second year players, whereas the Suns are in finals mode. It's likely to be the first time ever they'll make finals in the club's history, and they've got class players in the middle. Witts, Rao, Anderson, Flanders and Humphrey. They've just got so much class compared to Richmond, who are young and rebuilding. I'm going to tip the Suns to beat the Richmond Tigers by 50 points. The next game, played on a Saturday afternoon, is between Sydney Swans and Essendon Bombers. The Swans lost their Battle of the Bridge derby to the Giants by 44 points last week, whereas the Bombers got smashed by the Western Bulldogs by 93 points on a Thursday night. The players in the mix for the Swans are Laddams, Warren and Bryce. For the Bombers, their players in the mix are Hobbs, Menzies and Vicentini. Where the game will be won at, basically it's Essendon's injury. They got so many gun players out and struggle to fill the full entire squad. The players that the Bombers are missing are Bryan, Caldwell, Cox, Draper, Edwards, Hayes, Jones, Langford, Martin, Mackay, Parrish, Reid, Setterfield, Tassassis. So many experienced players out, and the Bombers got some youngsters playing like your Lau, McMahon, Kako, Caddy, just to name a few. Based on the experience that the Swans have, they've got good players. Warner, Heaney, Blakey, Gordon, gun players. And it's at the SCG. I'm going to tip the Swans that easily beat the Bombers by 50 points. The next game, played on a Saturday night, is between Collingwood Magpies and the Brisbane Lions. Collingwood had a good 36-point win against Richmond Tigers, whereas the Lions were so disappointing and they lost to Gold Coast Suns by 66 points in the Q Clash derby. The players in the mix for the Maggies are Hill, Pendlebury, Steele and Cox. For the Lions, their players in the mix are Day, McLaughlin and Morrill. Where the game will be won at, it's Collingwood's forward and Brisbane's defence. In the forward for the Maggies, you got Elliott, Marchek, Lipinski, Schultz, Membro and Hoskin Elliott. Whereas for the Lions in defence, you got Zorko, Gardner, Lester, Starswich, Andrews and McKenna. Just looking at the matchup, I like the balance of the Collingwood's forward line. You got some tolls in your Membro and Marchek that can take the overhead marks. Elliott can go take good overhead marks and can chuck the ball to the ground. And you got the small crumbing forward in Schultz. And I expect Collingwood full line to kick plenty of goals, and that's where I'll give the edge in the game. Therefore, I'm going to tip Collingwood to beat the Lions by 12 points, and also they're playing at home at the MCG. The next game, played on Sunday morning, is between St Kilda Saints and North Melbourne. St Kilda had a brilliant 6-point win against Melbourne Demons last week, compared to North Melbourne, who got absolutely demolished by Geelong, who beat them by 101 points. The players in the mix for the Saints are Henry, McLennan and Heath. For the Roos, their players in the mix are Fisher, Go and Phillips. Where the game will be won at, or it's just, how do I say it? It'll be difficult to tip North Melbourne this week after that performance against Geelong where they lost by 101 points. Whereas St Kilda, they're on cloud 9. They were losing by 46 points against Melbourne Demons at 3/4 time, And in the last 25 seconds, the side ringing Moreira kicked 2 goals and St Kilda stole the game against the Demons. So the Saints are on a high cloud 9, whereas the Kangaroos will be in disappointment mode where they lost to the Cats by 101 points. I just can't tip North Melbourne, and I'm going to tip St Kilda to beat the Kangaroos by 15 points. The next game, played on a Sunday afternoon, is between Geelong Cats and Port Adelaide Power at GMHBA Stadium in Geelong. Last week, Geelong had a magnificent 101 point win against the Melbourne Kangaroos, whereas the Power, they were so disappointing and lost to the Adelaide Crows in their showdown by 98 points. The players in the mix for the Cats are Stevens, Henry and Nimbus. For the Power, their players in the mix are Atkins, Liddy and Finlayson. Where the game will be won or why I will tip Geelong. Geelong had a magnificent 100.1 win against the Roos. They're in cloud 9. Good performance. Whereas the Power on Saturday night against the Crows, very disappointing. The game was very wet and they still lost to the Crows by 98 points in their showdown. And I just can't tip the Power. And therefore, I'm going to tip the Cats. Good form. Had a great win last week. I expect them to beat the Power by 75 points. The last game, played on a Sunday afternoon or twilight, depending if you're in Western Australia or Victoria, is between Fremantle Dockers and Carlton at Optus Stadium in Perth, Western Australia. Last week, the Dockers beat the arch rival West Coast Eagles by 49 points in the Western Derby, whereas the Hawks beat Carlton by 24 points last week. The players in the mix for the Dockers are Draper, Sharp and Walker. For Carlton, their players in the mix are Binns, Boyd and O'Keefe. Where the game will be won at, it's the ruck midfield setup of the two respective sides. For Fremantle, you got Jackson and ruck with the midfields of Sarong, Brayshaw, Bolton, O'Driscoll and O'Meara. For the Blues, you got De Koning in ruck with the midfields of Hewitt, Williams, P. Cripps, Akers and Sarah against his old side. Just looking at it, I like the Fremantle ruck setup. Jackson is a gun against De Koning, who's pretty good, but I back Jackson to beat De Koning. Then you got the class midfields of Sarong, Brayshaw, Bolton, and that's excluding Hayden Young, who I've got on the bench, against Hewitt, P. Cripps and Sarah. Fremantle got the inside midfielders that can go run two-way, Sarong, Brayshaw, and you've got the class Bolton, and you even have Hayden Young from the bench of his elite kicking against Carlton's gun midfield, P. Cripps. Then you've got the hard-working George Stewart and Sarah. Based on the ruck midfield set of the two respective sides, I expect Fremantle to win more clearances, and therefore they'll provide lots of inside 50s. They'll be able to provide to the free tall forwards of Tracy, Ross, Amos, and Ross kicks lots of goals in the last few games, and I expect him to kick more bag this weekend against Carlton. Therefore, I'm going to tip Fremantle to easily beat Carlton by 30 points. My round 21 tips are the Giants to beat the Western Bulldogs, and the remaining 8 games, all the home sides of the Crows, the D's, the Suns, the Swans, the Maggies, St Kilda, Geelong and Fremantle to all win their respective home games. Thank you for watching my video, and it will be appreciated if you can subscribe and comment to my videos. Hopefully you enjoyed my video, and see you next time. Cheers or bye.